All right, thanks then for coming. Let's kick this off. So, start easy and slow. The Mystery State of Solana Q1 25 report showed, I was talking about that the total app revenue went through the roof, up 20% quarter over quarter to $1.2 billion of that value. Stablecoin market cap, again, going up 145% quarter over quarter to more than 12 billion right now. So I'm curious from the foundation's perspective, which TradFi workflows like tokenized debt issuance, real-time treasury settlements, or the cross-border rails, what have graduated really from pilot to some live use cases that you're excited about, and which on-chain KPIs you look at to make sure that we are tracking to validate this product market fit on Solana that it had, especially from the institutional use cases.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's great to see all of you guys. Yeah, I think, as you said, that we talk a lot, particularly, more recently, a lot of people are focused on this real economic value, or REV, right? Which is all of the fees in the various forms that people are paying to use the chain and its applications. So that transaction fees, priority fees, MEV, right? It's the cumulative economic activity. And we see things that are reflective of value moving, assets that are moving, transactions on chain, through transaction volume, the velocity of money, the capital efficiency moving of money or the transfer of value, as a much more important indicator for the usefulness of the chain, the adoption of Solana, the kind of things people care about, than just, I'll say, metrics that have been traditionally used that are a little more static, like TVL, right? Total value locked. Obviously, there's plenty of debates and plenty of opinions you can find online about, is TVL a good metric or not? Is REV a good metric or not? And I think what is most exciting in seeing so much activity, so much transaction volume on Solana, north of, I think, 500 million transactions per day, is that rev and transaction volume is indicative that there are things that people can do with these assets, right? Whether it's the movement of money through stablecoin transfers, or all of the various sort of DeFi Legos that have been built up over the last several years. And now, as we're starting to see really serious tokenization efforts, securities coming on chain, IPOs on chain, tokenized equities, that it's not just that, okay, there's some deposits made into a smart contract, or there's some deposits made into an interest-bearing pool. But in addition to that, people can then use those assets in a productive way. And so we see this high velocity and high efficiency of capital that's already deployed on chain and continues to be deployed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like on that note, like when it comes to institutions, their onboarding, making sure that the network still with institutions stay decentralized, because we've seen the Bitcoin ETF flows that almost as a reference that it can concentrate the influence in a few custodians, on a few validators. So I'm curious, and also with the US stablecoin now, bill headed to Senate and then forward, how is Foundation thinking about educating the institutional allocators on the benefits of staking, and also incentivizing to make sure that we have like a broad set of new entrants so that the security budget, the governance stays decentralized, even in this institutional era?
Yeah, so let's see, there's a couple questions there.
Yeah.
Institutional staking, and then sort of security budget, governance, decentralization of the broader network. I think there's some similar threads, as I'll try to answer both of those, right? And as you know, right, I'm an engineer, right? I'm a network guy. I help build the network, and so my view and my hands-on work for 6.5 years that I've been on this project now has been on, the validators themselves, the harbor that they're running, the geographic and sort of economic decentralization and dispersion and resilience of the network itself. And I think it's, there's a number of different takes on institutional staking. I generally think that this is a really big net positive for our industry, for the Solana ecosystem. Let's see. There's a couple barriers that I think don't exist in Solana that may exist in other ecosystems that don't exist on Solana. Particularly the actual financial barrier to staking, right? Anyone who has $1 on Solana can stake, whether it's through native staking, whether it's through one of Marinate's products or through your Marinate Select, your new institutional product. Those who participate in the Solana ecosystem and staking and want to sort of take part in the Solana economy, from my perspective, from a technical perspective, right? There's no barrier here. Staking is natively supported in Solana. Anybody can, move it around through liquid staking tokens. From the security budget standpoint, there's actually some, if I can take a very small technical detour, there's actually some really interesting developments that were just announced 2 days ago at our event Scale or Die, which was this big developer conference that we hosted earlier this week in preparation for Ship or Die, which is our big 3,000 person conference that starts tomorrow. There's a new consensus model that's being proposed for the Solana network called Alpenglow. It's a massive engineering effort. One of the biggest changes or potential changes coming to Solana since we launched the network. And one of the major changes here that would impact validators and stakers or potential stakers is that in its current proposed form, Alpenglow would actually eliminate voting costs for validators on the network. This is going to have a lot of interesting sort of economic and financial implications for people who choose to run validators, as well as for the stakers that might delegate to them. But I think one of the things that is going to change is the financial barrier to actually running a validator. One of the biggest cost centers today is voting fees, right? This has been a longstanding criticism of Solana's network design, that the actual on-chain cost to run a node is actually quite high and therefore prohibitive to some smaller players. With the elimination of vote fees, I think this is actually going to unblock a lot of new entrants to the validator ecosystem, which I think will really, my hope is that this would further both geographic distribution and governance distribution across the network, while also sort of evolving the landscape that you and other institutional players are operating in. When you look at, okay, there's all these new validators and they have all these different parameters and configurations and levels of compliance and levels of disclosure, to really, I think, make a much more rich sort of, whether it's a compliant or institutional staking solution or, one that encourages growth of the network in all these different areas. A lot of those barriers are coming down. And just as we've seen with Solana's growth trajectory, when you bring down financial barriers, right? Solana is super fast, and most importantly, it's super cheap. People can experiment and iterate and build all sorts of innovative products that simply weren't, you couldn't even imagine it in previous, legacy blockchains or maybe even in earlier versions of Solana.
Yeah, so on that note of like a healthy validator ecosystem, I'm curious about your thoughts there, since today we're looking at 1,300 validators on Solana. Of them, say, on one side, you have like 100 validators privately run with people self-staking. On the other side, you have roughly 700 validators literally fighting to survive with less than 50,000 Solana staked. And since Solana staking can have these centralization forces, I'm curious what's the foundation stake and how you are thinking about the foundation delegation program today, which was a big goal of that program is making sure that we can take more validators off the ground, we make the network more resilient, more decentralized, and how you balance between supporting this through this subsidy and at the same time not trying to distort the market too much, and what's coming next for the delegation program.
Yeah, absolutely. The delegation program that the foundation runs, it's gone through, as you know, a number of iterations over the years, in response to, challenges and opportunities in support of the validator community. One of the challenges to, as I mentioned, to smaller operators is that vote fees present a pretty significant economic barrier if you're a smaller actor and you want to participate in Solana and run a node and help secure the network, with the vote fees going away as currently proposed by Alpenglow, and this is still, an early proposal stage, but hopefully we'll see some rollout maybe at the end of this year. I think that actually could reduce the need for the delegation program in its current structure, and leave it more open to new players kind of coming in, finding their niche. I think particularly in that lowest economic friction version, as Solana continues to see more adoption in all sorts of use cases, in all sorts of markets, a lot of folks want to see, or a lot of projects want to have their own validator, or at least have a regional node. If I'm in Latin America and I'm running an exchange, or I'm running a Solana product or a payments business or on and off ramps, it is known that having a sort of a staked node nearby in the region is actually advantageous for your users. You get better performance, you get lower latency from the user's perspective. And as more products come online and more developers establish closer relationships with node operators, this actually drives a much more sort of natural market force for more node operators to attract their own stake with a lot less capital at risk due to the eliminated voting costs. So I think the adoption itself of all of the apps and all of this, tokenization products and others that we're seeing on Solana are actually going to further drive the growth of the network and the validator set itself.
Mm-hmm. And on that stress testing note, like today, we are celebrating more than like 500 days on Solana without a hiccup. Let's call it like that.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, exactly. And like every day you have more than 100 million transactions per day on Solana, just like going through 40 billion per year, like to put it in context, just flowing through. So and even if maybe recently that might be like assets that are rather speculative, but that only shows how the network works, and that what can be an asset today, it can be another asset tomorrow. So that shows the infrastructure is really stable these days. So I'm curious, how do you balance between still trying to be innovative, still progressing, and making sure that the network is stable? And what happened in the past like 2 years that we are there where we are, just enjoying the ride almost?
Yeah. It's been, Solana's been battle tested since day one, right? We've always pushed the bounds of performance, and sometimes stuff has broken. I mean, you rightly pointed out, right? 2022 was a really hard year for the network, and it was hard for me and my team when it's like we had a lot of challenges with network congestion. There were a number of outages. I mean, it sucked. It sucked for everybody in the ecosystem. There's no way around it. And I think the only way that you get through this kind of stuff is you got to run through walls. We've always been pushing the performance bounds, but in the last particularly 18 to 24 months, all of the core protocol teams have invested really, really heavily in building up much more robust testing infrastructure. And the upcoming sort of introduction of FireDancer, which is Solana's second validator. This has been in development for almost 3 years now, running in parallel with Agave, which is Solana's primary validator, which basically runs the network now. Even throughout this development process, forcing these teams to work together to sort of reconcile, how can they both play nicely together on the network, has actually forced a lot more formalization and I'll say procedural rigor that has dramatically improved network resilience. And I would say, how do we balance this? The answer is we just continue to accelerate. Right? The network has always been designed to say the only bottleneck to Solana's speed and its capacity to grow and get faster should be the underlying hardware that the network runs on. Right, which is the physical servers that run your validators and the internet fiber links that connect them around the world. So anything that we can do to get as close as possible to the speed of the hardware, we're going to push, and we're going to push as hard as possible, because hardware always gets faster, right? As long as Intel and AMD and NVIDIA exist and continue to compete with one another, CPUs get faster and cheaper every year, and they get more powerful every year. Internet fiber gets laid. We've obviously got projects like 00 competing with the public internet itself on performance now. And so as long as the physical infrastructure hardware industry exists, and we do our jobs, Solana will always continue to get faster.
Yeah. So you heard it, accelerate. And like on the public companies node, as more Solana native firms are trying to follow the MicroStrategy playbook, in between now and maybe down the road, the Sol ETF approval going down later. I'm curious, what do you expect these things, these potential approvals or these firms following the MicroStrategy playbook? What is the impact on the validator, like the network, the staking landscape? Do you have any thoughts there, how that's going to change the industry if we allow like this big thing coming when it comes to institutional?
Well, I wouldn't even say we allow it because it's not even within our power to disallow it, right? We should be proactive and we should be responsive to where the market is, where we hope to see things go. But anybody can come and start a company on Solana. Anybody can acquire Sol on their balance sheet if they choose to. So I think overall, a lot of this, I'll say, is lending and continuing to build a lot of credibility and legitimacy to our industry, to Solana, the blockchain, and the ecosystem and the economy that's built up around it. And so what we're starting to see as a result of this are, as evidenced by everybody here and all of the announcements that you've alluded to, the professionals are showing up. A lot of people are paying attention, whether you have deep understanding of these technologies or if you understand that blockchain is really going to change the landscape for all financial infrastructure on Earth. And we're really starting to see the serious players, and therefore a lot more deep thought and critical thought into structures of markets, how we think about public equities, what capital markets could look like in a world that is really connecting all of the financial pieces together over a blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Final words. So you've been close for years to Solana since the very, very beginnings. I'm curious, imagine there's StakePoint 2028. Where is Solana positioned by that time? Like in the institutional staking landscape, what role does staking play in the success story of Solana in those 3 years?
3 years is an eternity from now.
Yeah.
It was funny. I had a meeting with Anatoly just this morning, and we were talking about seeing 8 weeks into the future feels like this. Really interesting haze. What I really hope to see, and what the mechanics are, will be still sort of shaking out. I hope that staking is sort of, for a lot of people and a lot of players, like a primary entry point to both the functionality and economics of this really rich, robust Solana economy, right? Not just sort of, okay, you can stake and you can earn your yield and you can hope that, the price of Sol does something. But I think there's a lot of, potential there to use staking to support particular initiatives that are maybe aligned with a company's goals or something, whether it's, a particular social value such as decentralization, or staking rewards are shared amongst a particular project, a company that's built on Solana, and it's, basically staking sort of subsidizes their infrastructure cost in a way, which is sort of what it does at a very technical level. So some kind of, like, if it's a revenue share type project, or you can support, I was talking with a validator just a couple days ago. He just graduated high school, and he said, yeah, I'm not going to go to college because I'm going to focus on building this Solana infrastructure company I started my junior year of high school. And we're going to use the staking rewards from our nodes to fund university clubs that want to run more validators.
Wow.
I was like, man, there's like nothing better I could ask for, right? If we're supporting more people to learn these technologies, to get in while they're hungry, and really push the bounds, like, that's just total victory case.
Awesome. There you heard it. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.